In the front of the mom-and-pop comic book shop were bins of the fantasies. In the storage space in back was the ugly reality. One of the shop owners, Barbara George, shot to death.
We were shocked. Barbara, shot in the head, it didn't seem like it could happen to such a good person.
Police interviewed merchants and customers at the mall. Had anyone seen anything out of the ordinary? It turned out Tom and Lenora Ward did. The couple who'd given Barb first aid had picked up on something when they first arrived that evening. A speeding car in front of the comic book shop.
And we both thought to ourselves and then said it to each other, boy, that car's going too fast.
Immediately, something else caught their eye. A man coming out of the closing shop door.
And they had on kind of a dark outfit for that time of the year, a Greek fisherman's cap. That's how I would describe it.
Barbara's husband, Michael, was given the news. Police asked him to show them around their store, now a crime scene. What are you seeing in demeanor?
The warning lights were going off because he's walking us through a store where his wife died and never once showed any emotion.
Mike never once cried. He was never once showing remorse or a man in panic that, oh my God, my girl's mother is gone.
Unfortunately for detectives, no gun, no forensic evidence, and no eyewitnesses were found. But investigators were learning a thing or two about Michael George.
We started receiving phone calls from people advising us that we might want to look at his relationship with his employee named Renee.
A little cozy, check it out, huh?
Yes.
One of Barbara's friends, Mary Shamo, even saw Michael and Renee canoodling at the store.
They were giggling together and their arms were crossed over to each other. And I mean, this was shortly after Barb was killed.
Michael and Renee would set up a new home together with the help of a $130,000 life insurance payout on Barb that he'd received as beneficiary.
Is he becoming what cops call a person of interest?
Yes. At that point he was.
Barbara George was in the graveyard, but by now there wasn't much doubt among her friends and family who'd put her there.
I believe he planned out the whole thing, and I believe there's no other suspect.
He's getting away with murder as your family sees it.
Right.
But without any forensic evidence, there was little the police could do. The investigation was slipping fast into what cops call the cold case file. 17 years passed by. Michael and Renee George were by now well settled in a new life in Pennsylvania. But a past that Michael George thought had been buried was about to be exhumed. Thanks to a newly formed cold case unit, detectives decided to take another look at the case, and the comic book murder files came out of the archives.
My immediate reaction, I was thrilled. I was thrilled beyond belief.
Thank you, sir.
The cold case detectives interviewed over 100 people. The one they did with this man turned out to be the game changer. His name is Mike Renaud, a college senior in 1990 and a Spider-Man fanatic. Right around the time of the murder, the detectives learned Renaud had placed a call to the Comics World store. A voice he knew very well answered the phone. It was Michael George.
He sounded like he was busy. He was in a hurry to get off the phone.
Did he say, I'm busy, there are people in the shop, I gotta go?
No, it was just a short.
Just something you could hear in his voice or the way he...
We would BS a little bit, and there was no time for BS.
The cold case cops had struck gold. Mike Renaud's story was the missing puzzle piece the detectives had been looking for years. If Renaud's account is true, it does nothing less than demolish Michael George's alibi that he was napping at his mother's house when Barb was murdered around 6 o'clock. Renaud's phone call story meant that George was lying. It was time for the cold case detectives to take a road trip to Pennsylvania. They paid a surprise visit to Michael George at Comics World.
We have reopening the case. Just a few questions for you. I want to talk to you about it. Okay.
Is he getting sweaty, twitchy, anything?
Oh, he was very nervous.
He was very pale.
Very nervous.
The detectives began asking George some tough questions about the insurance money. That's when things got confrontational.
So now what you're saying is I better get a lawyer.
We didn't say that. No.
Yeah, you did. No, you just said one of the possibilities is...
That is a possibility.
Insurance. Okay. So, if you're going to show up tomorrow, let me know. I'll get a lawyer, because this is bullshit now.
The police arrested him.
Okay. No, I didn't do it. I was with my daughters and my mom. Okay, no.
They know I didn't do this.
The cold case had turned red hot. 17 years later, Michael George was returning to Michigan to stand trial for the first-degree murder of his wife. But getting the comic book man with nothing but circumstantial evidence, no weapon, no witness, no DNA, made this case difficult to win.
We will prove to you that it was a murder. And if it's a murder, there's only one person in this world who had a reason to kill this wonderful person, and that's Michael George.
One witness, Teresa Daniluk, testified that she and her 12-year-old son went to Comics World every Saturday, including the week before Barb's murder. She remembered Michael George sidling up to her that day, even though Barb was in the store.
But what, if anything, did Michael George say to you about Barbara George?
That she was unattractive, and she was heavy. That he wouldn't have been with her if it wasn't for his two daughters.
Mr. Kaplan, are you ready with your next witness?
Yes, sir. Michael Renaud is here.
But Michael Renaud was still the prosecution's star witness. He alone could place Michael George in the shop about the time of Barbara's murder.
Who answered the phone?
Michael George.
Then the defense's turn.
There is simply no, zero, zip, nada physical evidence.
They claimed that it was simply a robbery gone bad.
So your theory of this awful incident is that a person or two committed a botched robbery, and in the end of it,
Yes.
Barbara George ended up dead on the floor.
Yes.
The defense also claimed that no other suspects were brought to light because the police work back then was so inept.
And did you ever do a canvass of the neighborhood to see who might have seen him between the hours roughly of 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock?
No, sir.
Michael George's fate was in the hands of the jury. After 3 weeks of competing theories, timelines, and testimony, they had to sort it all out.
All rights for the jury, please.
The jury of 8 women and 4 men filed in. The foreman read the verdict.
Count number 1, first-degree murder. We find the defendant guilty.
Guilty of first-degree murder. Michael George slumped and sobbed in his attorney's arms.
Please be seated.
Barb's sister and 2 brothers seemed to share a gasp of relief. Michael George would go on weeping for a full 2 minutes.
I've never seen a defendant break down like that.
But Lieutenant Craig Keith, the cold case detective who rediscovered the crucial evidence, was unmoved by George's tears.
Mike showed no emotion back in 1990, and now he cries. And my impression of that is Mike is crying for himself.